What if your social anxiety isn't in your mind, but in your nervous system? In this video, we're going to talk about the root causes of social anxiety so you can understand yourself better and finally understand that this is not your fault. If you struggle with social anxiety, you may have at some point thought that there's something wrong with your mind. That's exactly what I used to think too, when everyday situations caused an overwhelming amount of stress and anxiety. But as I started to learn more about this, I began to find real, concrete reasons behind my symptoms and my social anxiety. Before, I was really wondering, why was I anxious about going to the workplace cafeteria, but my coworkers weren't? Why did my hands shake and my muscles tensed up while standing in a checkout line at the store? I felt mentally healthy, yet this anxiety was draining so much of my energy in everyday life. So in this video, I want to share 4 of the most important root causes that I believe are behind social anxiety. I'm not claiming these are the only reasons. There may be absolutely other reasons. But when I talk about these causes in my courses, my clients usually recognize at least 3 of them in themselves, or often all 4. In my own case, all 4 root causes apply. First, I want to talk about why it's so important to understand the reasons behind social anxiety. I believe it can help you come out of shame, to realize that maybe there isn't anything wrong with you. There may be real reasons behind your social anxiety. It's not in your head. I want you to understand this. Social anxiety, it's not your fault. But there are reasons why your body and mind react this way by becoming anxious in everyday social situations. After hearing these 4 causes, you no longer need to feel ashamed or blame yourself. Instead, you can begin to understand yourself more deeply. I also hope that you can become more compassionate toward yourself and even forgive yourself. And secondly, when we understand the causes behind social anxiety, we can also find the right ways to heal. When we know where the problem comes from, we can begin to address it. As I mentioned earlier, there can be many different reasons behind social anxiety, but based on my experience, here are the 4 main ones. First, traumatic experiences, especially adverse childhood experiences. Second, a highly sensitive nervous system. Third, personality traits such as shyness or perfectionism. And fourth, the genetics. But I want to add something based on my own experience. Most people who struggle with social anxiety are not actually shy. And this is so interesting that I'll make another video about it later. Okay, so in this video, we'll first focus on trauma-related causes. I will go deeper into the other 3 root causes in another video. So why can traumatic experiences lead to social anxiety? First of all, traumatic experiences can break our sense of basic safety, especially if they happened in early childhood. This can lead to a loss of trust in the environment. In a way, you could say that social anxiety is a lack of inner safety. When traumatic experiences happen early in life, they don't just affect our thoughts, they create physiological changes in the body. Changes occur in the developing brain and nervous system, which can later show up as anxiety in everyday situations. Trauma is never just in your head. It also means real physical changes in your body. Examples of traumatic experiences that can affect brain and nervous system development include physical, psychological, or emotional abuse, living in a constant atmosphere of fear, or bullying at school. These are usually long-term experiences that create ongoing stress and fear. And for some of us, it's very clear what has happened in our lives, and we can name those experiences as traumatic. But others don't even remember anything particularly unusual or may not recognize their experiences as trauma. So I want to share a definition by a Finnish psychiatrist, Anssi Leikola, about what can cause trauma. Because usually we think trauma must have been something big, something really terrible, but it can also be something that happens in everyday life, and we get used to it and think it's normal. So the definition of trauma, according to Anssi Leikola, is: traumatization often results from multiple forms of insecurity, such as difficult home environment, mistreatment, lack of communication, bullying, and injustice. One of the main causes of childhood trauma is when the parental role becomes unclear or neglected in the child's environment. If a parent's attention is focused on their own needs, whether it's career, substances, or relationships, the child's sense of inner safety inevitably remains, to some extent, incomplete. So how do traumatic experiences shape the brain and body and can be the root cause of your social anxiety? Let's walk through the 4 main ways this can happen. First, traumatic experiences can leave the body in prolonged fight or flight state. Your nervous system may stay in a constant state of hyperarousal with elevated stress hormones. Even if the stressful or frightening situation ended years or decades ago, your body may still be stuck there, as if you were still in danger. This is why healing social anxiety is, above all, about updating your body to the present moment. The threat is over. You are safe now. Okay, second, trauma also changes the brain's alarm system, which can lead to social anxiety. When you experience anxiety, your so-called emotional brain, the limbic system, takes over. The amygdala, often called the brain's alarm center, becomes overactive. It signals danger even when there is no real threat. In other words, your brain is giving you false alarms. For example, when you're about to enter a work meeting and you notice your heart rate rising and your hands starting to sweat, there is no real danger, but your brain and body react as if there is. And this can be a trauma-based stress response. This is something we need to address if we want to free ourselves from social anxiety. Okay, third reason why trauma can be related to your social anxiety. Trauma can disrupt the balance between the prefrontal cortex, so-called your rational brain, and the amygdala. Your rational brain knows there is no danger, but the amygdala keeps sounding the alarm. So we need to learn how to activate the prefrontal cortex so we can calm ourselves down. And lastly, the fourth reason. Trauma can also affect how well your nervous system regulates itself. When you feel anxious or nervous, your sympathetic nervous system activates very quickly, and it can be difficult to return to a state of calm and safety. But with regular mind-body practices, you may notice that your nervous system and brain begin to change. Your reactions begin to change. When your so-called vagal brake is functioning well, you gain the ability to slow down the stress response, to calm your nervous system and recover more quickly. This means that the anxiety or nervousness no longer escalates into panic. But when the vagal brake and nervous system regulation are not working optimally, emotions can take over. You may experience panic attacks or intense anxiety and feel like you have no control over your reactions. The good news is that your brain and nervous system are adaptable. We cannot change what has happened in the past, but we can teach our brain and body that we are safe now. And that begins by learning to recognize and accept our feelings and reactions. We need to learn how to sit with uncomfortable emotions so we can realize this feeling will not break me. Because at its core, social anxiety is a fear of our own internal experiences. You may think, I'm anxious about that meeting or I'm nervous about that job interview, but in reality, you are afraid of how your body will react. And that's why the most important thing we can learn is how to feel safe in our own body. Okay, but now in the end of this video, you might be thinking that so many people have experienced trauma. Why doesn't everyone end up with social anxiety? Well, for some people, it can show up as depression, OCD, or even physical symptoms like migraines. Trauma affects each of us differently. For you and me, our body responds with social anxiety, and that's something we just have to learn to accept. So thank you so much for watching this video. I would truly love to hear what thoughts it brought up for you. So feel free to leave a comment below, and I'll see you in the next video where we'll cover 3 more root causes of social anxiety. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it when it comes out.